There is a small padlock in the corner of your address bar. You have seen it perhaps 100,000 times. Most people believe it means this site is safe. It does not mean that. It never has. Today we find out what that padlock is actually checking and the slightly uncomfortable answer to who you are really trusting when it appears. Last episode left us stuck. Signatures prove a message came from a particular private key, but to check one, you need that person's public key. So if somebody hands you a key and says, "This belongs to your bank," and you believe them, every signature they make verifies perfectly, and you feel completely secure while talking to a stranger. Proving who somebody is only works if you already know which key is theirs. The obvious fixes both fail. Meeting your bank in person to collect their key is the courier problem from episode 2 again, and you connect to hundreds of machines a day. Simply accepting whichever key arrives is exactly the attack we described. You need somebody else to vouch. So here is the idea. Suppose an organization exists that both you and the website already trust. The website goes to it, proves it genuinely controls a particular domain name, and in return, the organization signs a short statement saying, in effect, the public key printed here belongs to this website. Signed, us. And how does a website prove it controls a domain in the first place? Usually by being asked to do something only the real owner could do. Put a specific file at a specific address on that site, or add a specific record to that domain's entry in the phone book of the internet. If it appears, you clearly control the domain. If it does not, you get nothing.
It is a name, a public key, and a signature from somebody else. That is all. The everyday version is a passport. A passport does not make you trustworthy. It carries your details and a stamp from an authority that is hard to forge. A border guard who has never met you believes the details because they trust the issuer and recognize the stamp. A certificate works the same way, and the stamp is a digital signature from episode 4. So let us walk through what actually happens when you visit a website, because this is where everything in this series finally clicks together. You type an address and press enter. The site sends back its certificate. Your browser reads it and sees a public key, a claim about which website it belongs to, and a signature from some authority. Now your browser checks that signature exactly as we did last episode, using the authority's public key. And here is the question you should immediately ask. Where did your browser get the authority's public key? Pause the video and think about it, because the answer is stranger than people expect. It was already there. Your operating system and your browser shipped with a built-in list of a few hundred organizations that are trusted by default, and their public keys came pre-installed. Nobody asked you. You have almost certainly never looked at that list. The chain of checking has to stop somewhere, and it stops at a set of decisions somebody else made and put on your device before you open the box. In practice, there is usually a chain rather than a single step. The deeply protected root authority signs a certificate for an intermediate, and the intermediate signs certificates for actual websites. Your browser follows that chain link by link, checking each signature until it either arrives at something in its pre-installed list, in which case the padlock appears, or it does not, in which case you get the warning page everybody clicks through far too quickly. That warning deserves a moment because it is more honest than it looks. It appears when the chain fails to hold, and there are innocent reasons for that. A certificate that quietly expired. An internal tool with a certificate nobody official ever signed. But it is also exactly what an interception attack looks like from the inside, and your browser cannot tell the difference. It is not saying something is wrong. It is saying, I cannot verify who this is. Once the key is verified, everything else we built takes over. Your browser and the site use the key exchange from episode 3 to agree a shared secret, then switch to the fast symmetric encryption from episode 2 for the conversation, with fingerprints from episode 1 checking nothing is altered in transit. 5 episodes of ideas in the fraction of a second before the page appears. So now we can answer the question we opened with. What does the padlock actually promise? Two things, and only two. Your connection to that address is encrypted, so nobody in between can read or alter it, and the site proved it genuinely controls the domain name shown in the bar. Now look at what it very deliberately does not promise. It says nothing about whether the people running that site are honest, nothing about whether the site is a scam, nothing about whether your data will be looked after. Certificates today are free and issued automatically, which is excellent for security overall, and it also means a criminal running a convincing fake shop gets a perfect padlock in about 30 seconds. The padlock means you are genuinely talking to the address you typed. It does not mean the address you typed deserves it. Now the honest weakness, and it is a real one. This entire system rests on a few hundred organizations behaving properly. If any single one of them issues a fraudulent certificate, whether through a mistake, a break-in, or pressure from a government, that certificate will be trusted by billions of devices instantly. This is not hypothetical. A few years ago, one of the largest certificate authorities in the world, responsible for a huge share of the certificates on the internet, was found to have been handing them out carelessly for years. No break-in, no attacker. It had outsourced the job of checking who people really were and had not supervised that work properly. Investigators eventually counted tens of thousands of certificates that should never have existed. The browser makers set a deadline, then began switching off trust in its certificates release by release. And rather than rebuild, the company sold its certificate business to a competitor. One of the biggest names in the industry was removed from the internet's list of who to trust and left the business altogether. The main defense is a nice idea. Every certificate that gets issued is published into public append-only logs that anybody can inspect. So if an authority quietly issues a certificate for your bank's domain to somebody else, it appears in a public record, and it can be spotted. If that structure sounds familiar, it should. It is fingerprints and append-only records doing exactly what they did in our very first episode. The system is not trustless. It is trust concentrated in a small number of places and then watched. There is one more messy corner worth knowing about. Suppose a website's private key is stolen. The certificate needs to be canceled, and telling every browser on Earth to stop believing a specific certificate turns out to be genuinely difficult and unreliable. The practical answer has been to stop relying on cancellation and instead make certificates expire quickly, so a stolen one is only useful briefly. It is not elegant. It works. So here's the big picture. A certificate is a name, a public key, and somebody else's signature vouching that the two belong together. Your browser checks that signature using keys that arrived pre-installed on your device, following a chain until it reaches one it was told to trust. If the chain holds, you get an encrypted connection to the address you actually typed and nothing more than that. The whole structure is a small number of organizations watched in public. And that is the mathematics complete. Fingerprints, shared keys, agreements between strangers, signatures, and certificates. All of it works. All of it is sound. And systems built from it get broken constantly. In the news. Every year. Almost never because somebody defeated the mathematics. Next time, we look at how cryptography actually fails, which is a far more interesting and far more human story.